Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show with authors from all over the world. We just were talking to a Canadian author from Finland, and we had a UK author this morning. But my favorites are authors about the American West and historical novels. Our next guest is Michael Ross. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, good to be here.
Now I'm going to pop up your book cover here, The Horse of Phantom Beach. Tell us a little bit about that. Is that a historical novel?
Well, in a sense, it's classed as magical realism, but it has a lot of the history of the Chumash Indian people from Santa Barbara area in it, and the basic premise. I got this kind of from my granddaughter because she was moving from Kansas to a new strange place and said, I don't know if I'm going to have friends and, things like that. And so I wrote this story about a 12-year-old girl moving from Kansas to Santa Barbara. And it's set in modern day, but one of the things she runs into is a Chumash Indian boy. And she starts learning about the history of the area and the Santa Barbara mission, the Chumash Rebellion, which a lot of people haven't heard of, and things like that. So
now, this isn't your first book by far. I see some behind you, but I'm going to pop those up on the screen. Across the Great Divide. Is that a series of books?
That's a trilogy. Yeah, that was something that I started because my family knew the main character. I tend to write, for the most part, biographical historical fiction. So there's a lot of real people involved. And my main character is William Crump. And he was someone that my family knew and the founder of Lubbock, Texas.
Texas.
And also there's kind of a parallel story that runs through those books of a black slave family that were enslaved by the Clays in Kentucky and escaped and fought in the war and then found their way west to Colorado, to the Colorado Gold Rush, and then involved in Kansas. And then the third book in the series is called The Founding, which is kind of the culmination of founding two towns. One black, one white. A lot of people are not familiar. There were about 11 black towns founded in the Midwest by people that were escaping from the South to, get away from Jim Crow.
Now, I want to come back to the Horse of Phantom Beach in a few minutes, but sticking to the Great Divide book, it seems like these take a tremendous amount of research.
Yep, it did. It took an enormous amount of research for doing the story. Luther's story, I read about 200 slave diaries and did a lot of research on the Underground Railroad and just reading tons about the Civil War and John Morgan and, all of this. So, and then I actually took a trip to Lubbock, to my old hometown, because some of the information that exists about the Crumps is only in dusty boxes in the museum in the Southwest Collection.
Wow.
And I had some that, the Crump family had given me, but there was still a lot that was just stored away in boxes. So.
That's great. You got to be able to access that. And somebody who loves history like me, I'm going to probably learn a lot of new things I had no idea by reading these books. Things I had no idea.
That's what people tell me.
Yeah. Let's go back to because this book, The Horse of Phantom Beach, fascinates me because, for number one, it's kind of would you say a California story?
Yeah, it is mostly a California story. I mean, she starts off in Kansas, but that's pretty brief. I mean, her dad gets the news that his hospital, he's a doctor, his hospital is closing. Turns out that there's a hospital, and this is true in real life, that there's a hospital in Santa Barbara that is owned by the same healthcare company, and he's transferred. And the cultural difference between Lindsborg, Kansas, and Santa Barbara, California, is is like a different planet.
I bet. I bet. And it's through the eyes of a teenage girl or 12-year-old
Right.
girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is pretty traumatic just being that age anyway for a girl, but to be lifted up and having to move and get new friends and face a new culture, I bet it's a fascinating tale.
That's something that my granddaughter had to face, and it's something I had to face. I lived in 7 different states. We moved practically every year
Oh,
that
boy.
I was in school, so I got pretty familiar with that.
Now, again, I want to get back to the research element. What kind of research did you do for this book about the history of Santa Barbara and that region and the particular Indians that were there?
Well, I did a lot of research on the Chumash. I read about the Chumash caves. I interviewed a member of the Chumash tribe. I read, things about the Chumash Rebellion and the founding of the missions. I was somewhat familiar with the missions from having lived in California and visited all the different missions up and down the coast. But this was kind of just a slice of that, and so the Chumash were, at one point they pretty much owned the Channel Islands and they owned the area around Santa Barbara and so forth. And when the white people came, as happened many other places, they brought a lot of diseases and practically wiped them out. And of course, they also enslaved them, quote, for their own good. And finally, the Chumash had enough, and they went away. They went up into the Santa Ynez Mountains, and the Spanish chased them
Oh, boy.
with cannons and horses, which the Indians didn't have, and compelled them to come back. And that was kind of like a Trail of Tears thing,
Yeah.
with, a lot of people dying on the way.
Well, as a native Californian, I'm going to be fascinated to read that. I had no idea that was going on here in the Santa Barbara area. And it sounds like a fun way to present the information, like I said, through the eyes of this young girl who was uprooted and moved to a new culture.
Yeah, and the idea is that her parents get a house fairly close to the beach, and she starts seeing these strange occurrences on the beach, which I won't
Okay.
spoil that, but
I'll put the cover up again, and maybe people get a clue as to what might be coming along. The Horse of Phantom Beach. Now, I want to point out to our viewers that all of your social media is kind of the same. Is it Historical Novels Are Us? Your
right.
Your
Yeah, there's a
webpage,
YouTube
Instagram.
channel.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook. The only exception is Twitter, which is Michael under Ross 7.
Michael _ Ross 7. Very good. All right, Michael, we're running up against a time crunch. What will we find, by the way, what will we find at your web address? HistoricalNovelsOrUs.com.
Basically, what I do with my website is I try to have historical snippets about different people that are interesting, but you probably never heard of. And so for example, there's a series on all of the vice presidents' wives. Most people don't even know who the vice presidents were, let alone who their wives were. So, and there's a series on education, the development of education in the U.S. There's another on socialism in the U.S. and so on. So.
By the way, and I know we're out of time, but I just want to drag this out a moment longer. Some of your books have won some pretty prestigious awards. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, they've won Book of the Year from Coffee Pot Book Club fairly often, and the last of the Across the Great Divide, The Founding, is currently up for an International Book Award with Chanticleer international awards. So that'll be decided in about a week.
That's nice. It's important to me because I'm always having to decide on what am I going to read next. And when some books have received some awards and some special notice, it sure helps pave the way for me to pick my next book.
Yep.
By the way, what formats are your books in? What formats are they in?
Pretty much anything you'd like, except for The Horse of Phantom Beach right now is only on Kindle. But for the Across the Great Divide, there's hardback for the first book, paperback, ebook, and audio. There's the audio is on both Spotify and Audible and a few other places, Barnes and Noble, you know.
I just find the older I get, audio books are so much more accessible because it's harder to read the small print for me. But I'll look for those on the Audible. Thank you, Michael.
Well, they're all on Libby as well, so
on Libby,
you can
perfect.
check the audio books out of the library.
Very good.
And I still get paid.
Oh, good. That's good to hear. Well, thank you, Michael. I want to have you back again. You're fascinating. You're the kind of author I like to read.
Thank you very much.
And for our viewers, stick around. We're going to have another author coming up right after this.